And how has this affected you as a family? Do you feel like it's brought you closer together in supporting each other? I mean, I look at my kids and there's so much sibling bickering that goes on. And sometimes I'm imagining an experience this profound. How has that affected your family life?
It's really been hard, honestly. The kind of stress that we've been living under makes it very difficult. I mean, we're all pulling together, but at the same time, it's really hard. It's hard to be so stressed out. I'm trying not to be, but it's difficult. I mean, now I have to worry about Roz's safety again. You know, it's difficult. So I would say it takes a really bad toll on families, and staying together is difficult. It's not easy at all. And I've talked to other people the same thing. So, and also it's hard on families. My husband and I have an internet business, so we have flexibility and we can kind of move temporarily. You know, it's not easy, but we do it. But other people can't. And so I've talked to so many people. I ran into a woman. I actually knew her from New York when Ross was there, and here she was in Colorado. And I'm like, oh my God, we're running in the same circles, unfortunately. But anyway, she hadn't seen her husband since last December, because she couldn't afford it. She couldn't afford to come out from the East Coast to Colorado. And I don't think that's taken into consideration. It's like kind of like they don't care about the kids, about the families. And it's very hard on families in general. It's just tough. Plus there's a financial burden, and because of lawyers and everything. And it's really kind of unbelievable what people go through.
It's emotional, it's financial, it's psychological, it's stressful.
Mental. Yes, absolutely. You're right.
And
physical.
How has it been on you physically?
I almost died. Literally, I almost died. I came within minutes of my heart just giving out.
Because you were so stressed?
Well, they said it was this thing called broken heart syndrome, which affects the left ventricle of your heart. And it was after the trial and the sentencing, and my heart gave out. You know, it's just, I'm okay now, but yeah, it's like seeing your child killed in front of you, murdered in front of you. But the thing is, they're still alive. So there is no closure. You still have to fight for them because they're suffering all the time. Not that, hey, I losing a child, if a child dies, you never get over that either. So they're with you anyway. It's analogous, except I guess you could say that I get to see him and I have hope, but it's pretty rough.
My son has been at the brunt of sort of passive aggressive bullying at school, and that has taken me through hell and high water as a mother. And, you know, do I stick up for him? Do I let him learn his own independence? How do I do this? And I can only imagine it's like that on, you know, uber steroids for you and your situation.
Yeah, that's tough though. How old is your son?
13.
13. Yeah, it's a tough age too.
God.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's basically the bottom line is when your child is suffering, you're suffering. You cannot be happy. You can't really be at peace and at rest. And people say, well, how do you keep going? I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just say, okay, bye, Ross. See ya. Too bad. So sad. I'm going off and having, pursuing my bliss. I mean, I don't know. What am I supposed to do? I can't leave him to rot in prison. I can't. I mean, it's just, I'm incapable of doing it, you know? And so I just, every day, there's an interesting saying, a friend of mine, she said she had to deal with the government too. She actually won, and she gives me hope. But in any case, she said, there's a saying called turtling forth, which is like a turtle. You kind of next step, the next step, the next step, you know, every day you just take the next step. And I'm like, that's what I do. That's exactly what I do. So it's like, okay, what's next? Okay, I'll handle it. Now I handle it. Now, you know, and you just keep turtling forth. And also remember, this too shall pass with your son. This too shall pass.
That's my favorite saying.
Yeah.
That's my favorite saying.
Yeah.
That is definitely her saying, and also because it's her last name.
Yeah. I hated my last name until I realized what a gift it was when I heard some beautiful saying like that.
Yeah. But it is hard no matter what your kids are going through. And it's hard for them to understand. Well, I'm not talking about your son now. It's like it's hard for them to understand this too shall pass. Because to them, it seems like this is everything, you know, and it's not.
Yeah.
We all know 13, what, you know, isn't. Thank God, right? 13 is a tough age. And my daughter's much nicer to me now than when she was 13. But I won't embarrass her any more than I am.
Well, my mum was probably listening to me saying, gee, she turned out okay. She was a jerk when she was, because I was not cool.
Right.
I was not
Well, it's hormone poisoning, right? My daughter said, she said, Mom, I realized I was being really mean to you, but I just couldn't help it. So I'm like, yeah, I know.
What a comment.
Well, she was already nice. She was already in her 20s, you know. She's like, I just couldn't help it. In a way,
I moved away from my mother for 10 years, and I really just needed to work through some stuff. And I realized that we both had our issues, but I literally moved to the other side of the world. And it was like largely because I had to sort out who I was outside of the shadow of this very strong personality. And when I came back, we sat down and had a glass of wine. And I went, Mum, I'm so sorry for all the shit I put you through. And she looked at me with the most beautiful, loving expression. She goes, "It's all right, my darling. You're my daughter." You know, like we really are so forgiving.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even a teenager when I ran away from home. I was like in my 30s by then. I was like, I'm out of here.
No, it's being a mother and a parent, you know, father makes you very vulnerable, right? So you can't give up on your kids though. They're part of your cells. So it's just you can't do it. I mean, it's very sad though, because a lot of people come up to me and say, my mom would never do this for me. And I'm like, yeah, they would. But, you know, the truth is a lot of people can't either. I do have a big mouth, which is finally going to some good use. And, you know, seriously, it's like, and I'm educated. A lot of the people who are in there, they're not educated. They can't communicate in the same way. You know, it's the skills too. But then others are just like, hey, you screwed up, done. I want nothing more to do with you. And they write them off. But others say, yeah, my mom would do this too. You know, so it's an interesting mix.
Lynn, you mentioned earlier that you have a network of influencers and supporters in the crypto space who are on board and on the journey with you trying to free Ross. Can you tell us about some of these people and your relationship with Roger Ver and some of the other people? I've seen a lot of names on the website. So can you tell us about the other people who are supporting you?
Sure. Well, Roger stepped up several years ago. He's very creative about how he has helped us. So I had tweeted a picture of Ross in prison, and Roger took that picture and said, if he's innocent, he needs our help. If he's guilty, he's a hero, or something like that. And I will give $10 for every time this is retweeted. And he ended up giving us $160,000. And it really got us through the trial. And I mean, it was so great, but he did it in a way that also amplified the message and, got a lot of attention, not just writing me a check type thing. And then later when he matched the funds on the Free Rossathon, it just boosted the event. And so he's been, steadfastly supportive and outspoken. He's very much against the drug war. He spent time in prison himself. You know, it was 8 months or something like that. And so he has some experience with what it's like. So he's been great. He and Ross have corresponded, and he's been a true friend. And he's also advised me on things, you know, like he helped me back in the early days. He said, listen, when you tweet, you need to put a hashtag something and tag people. You know, I mean, I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, he was very helpful. And
that's the millennials stepping up, isn't it? It's millennials stepping up into what they're brilliant at, social media.
But for me, it's like learning a foreign language as an adult, right? I'll never be fluent as they are. You know, I don't think I'll never, you know, with my phone or any of that stuff, it's like, oh God, this is always going to be a foreign language to a certain extent. But anyway, I'm learning it. I'm getting better. And then Erik Voorhees came and visited Ross. He's, Shapeshift. And he was one of the early people in Bitcoin. And he, spoke out for Ross's petition. Really nice guy, very supportive, there when we need him. Charlie Lee of Litecoin, I have not met yet. I'm going to be at a conference with him so I can thank him in person for stepping up and saying, hey, I learned about Bitcoin from an article about Silk Road and we need to let him out. And that's the whole point. Who knows if Litecoin would even exist, if Bitcoin would even exist. It was really for Ross about an idea. It was about a platform and an idea. It wasn't about drugs. He didn't care about drugs. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a drug kingpin and I'm going to make all this money. And, the guy lived with 3 roommates. He didn't even have a car. That was not what he was focused on. It wasn't money and power. And, I think there's very few drug kingpins who care about voluntary interaction, and not using force. But they smeared him with that. And they also piled on with that because Ross wouldn't plead guilty. And they originally, that wasn't part of the charges, and they threatened him with it. Then they added it, the prosecutors. It gave him he gave him 2 life sentences instead of 1, and a mandatory minimum of 20 years. But of course, the mandatory minimum didn't matter because the judge went way past the mandatory minimum. She said, I'm going to give you the harshest penalty I possibly can. And
I saw
luckily,
that.
they didn't have the death penalty. I mean, she would have done that. She basically said she would. She also is very antagonistic. Well, the whole thing was about Bitcoin, I think. Senator Chuck Schumer from New York came out again, he said, this Silk Road's got to be taken down. We've got to take down Bitcoin. Well, he was on the Senate Finance Committee. He was on the Banking Committee, and he's very in with financial powers. And I think they were very worried about this. What do you mean there's this all other currency that we have no control over, and what is this thing? And I think it's very obvious from the other sentences that it wasn't about drugs, because the biggest drug seller on Silk Road got 10 years, and it goes down from there. This Bitcoin thing, I think, was very alarming to them, and I think that's why they went after him so hard.
If you were going to sort of spell it out for someone at a bus stop, what are the key legal issues that you're challenging with this? Because I've read about the fact that two of the police, the people that were
federal agents,
that they've ended up in prison too. So can you sort of give a bullet point list of exactly what the challenges are? About
those agents, it's not only that they used their access to Silk Road to steal over $1 million, but they had access to the site and they could act as DPR, the handle of the person running it, who I think there were many. They could change what was on there in terms of chats and things that are written on the site, or they could delete. And by the way, well, not really answering your question, but let me digress for a second. It was discovered after trial in the evidence that some evidence had been tampered with and deleted. And it was also discovered that Dread Pirate Roberts logged in to the Silk Road forum after Ross was already in solitary. So it wasn't Ross. Who was it? I think, I try to just say, first of all, excessive sentencing. The sentence should fit the crime. The trial had many due process violations, so that the trial itself is a problem. The illegal surveillance and the lack of search warrants, where the government can now just come in and surveil all of our internet activity and scarf it up and use it how they wish, without a warrant, without oversight, in secret, as they did to Ross. But this was before the Supreme Court in Ross's case, and the Supreme Court chose not to address it. So we're all still vulnerable that way. And, of course, officials can be blackmailed by what's on the internet, what they put on the internet, or who knows what all they could find out. At least they should get a warrant. The fact that the judge could use uncharged, unproven allegations that were never ruled on by a jury, and that is the Constitution, to enhance this sentence.
So she was basically abusing power.
Totally abusing power, in my opinion, yes.
I mean, the judge was so harsh and emotional and unjustified. I mean, considering the evidence tampering and the fact that no harm was done or proven to anybody, it just seems so hostile.
She's very hostile to the whole thing, and I don't think it was just because of drugs. She was very hostile to the philosophy behind the site, and even said at sentencing, we know you started this site for philosophical reasons, and I'm not sure that's a philosophy you've left behind. And it is troubling and dangerous. And so she's going to put Ross away for his philosophy. That is basically, his ideas, his philosophy, his political beliefs, which of course is a violation of freedom of speech. And it's not allowed to be used in sentencing, but she got away with it so far.
Is this basically like an anti-terrorism campaign? Is this like the whole 9/11 sort of fever being reignited in this situation?
It's interesting. I mean, thank God they haven't thrown terrorism at him, at least, because they smeared him with everything else. But their methods, it's a good point.
I was at a get-together recently, and I was talking about the fact that I was really excited about meeting with you. And there was a guy that I didn't know, and I tweeted this, and I think you commented on it. But there was a guy that I didn't know at the table, and I was saying, I'm really excited, this mom and everything that you're doing. And he said, for me, the thing that happened to Ross Ulbricht was a bit like, take Mark Zuckerberg down, the Facebook, warrior, if you like, or whatever, the owner of Facebook, take him down because somebody, put some pornographic pictures up on his site. I mean, using the owner of the site and pointing the finger at that person because of the activity of other human beings on the site. Well, a whole heap of us should get thrown in jail if that's the case.
Absolutely. I mean, you can look at, Amazon was being sued by a mom whose daughter bought cyanide on Amazon and killed herself with it. And horrible thing, Jeff Bezos didn't go to court over that. Craigslist, which, I don't know, do they have Craigslist in Australia?
No, something similar. We have Gumtree.
There's tons of drugs being dealt on Craigslist. Everybody knows it. There's prostitution. There's been murders, and I'm not saying, we're not, obviously you're not either saying that those people should be in court. I'm just saying Ross is being used as a scapegoat and shouldering the burden of every darknet market site that things happen. I mean, Facebook people sell drugs on.
And it's so obvious and they think no one can see, but no one does anything about it. They'd rather go after speeding tickets and crap like that.
Yeah, it's the same thing. They're not going to drag Mark Zuckerberg into court. It really sets a terrible precedent for liability on the part of website hosts.
It's really a tragic sort of marketing technique, isn't it, in a way? Like I feel like that this has been used as a way of saying, okay, if you're involved in crypto, this is potentially what's going to happen. It's all very dark and mysterious. And as you say, it almost feels like that's backfired because it's given crypto a lot more exposure and more people are jumping on it anyway. So I just wonder about that position of that judge and the other person that you said who was associated. I can't remember, the senator who was on the
and
finance
Chuck Schumer recommended that judge for her position on the bench. And the lead prosecutor Preet Bharara was Chuck Schumer's special counsel for years and owed his job to Chuck Schumer. And Ross was arrested in California, but he was brought back to Schumer's state for trial. It was very political. It was a cozy little political, hatchet job.
All those sort of corporate handshakes.
So, I just don't see how he could have had a fair trial anyway. It was shocking to see it, actually. It was shocking to see that trial.
How do we, if you can tell all the listeners, the best way that we can support you? Obviously, signing the petition.
Yeah, and sharing it.
But also, how do we support Ross?
He knows all about the petition. So, I mean, he'd be very happy to see the petition growing, and it's an important tool. So signing the petition, sharing the petition, of course, there's always monetary. It's so expensive, the whole thing. If people want to donate, there's ways to do it on the site. That's always helpful. We're still paying lawyers, lots of money. If anyone has political connections, I know you're in Australia, but I'm trying to make political connections so I can get to the president or people who know him or who can educate him on this. So that'd be great. And then, writing Ross a letter or any kind of volunteer help, people have a lot of skills. So it's very easy to reach me through freeross.org, and there's lots of ways to help on freeross.org. Supporting us on social media too. Follow me. Ross has a Twitter now. That's Real Ross U. Follow him. Of course, he has more followers than I do with 30 some odd tweets. I've been working at it for almost 5 years. He's already surpassed me, but that's good. That's fine.
How do you spell? Is it Real Ross U, did you say?
Yeah, for Ulbricht. It's for his last name because everything else was taken. His name was taken.
Yeah.
So this is the Real Ross Ulbricht. And Real Ross Ulbricht was too long, and I think, or something. I don't know. He decided on Real Ross.
Only so many characters. So I've got a question for you. When you were talking about the monetary help, have you heard of Legal Aid?
Legal Aid?
Not Legal Aid, but this one is Legaler Aid.
Oh no, I haven't.
It is it's a guy that we interviewed, and I'll put the link in the show notes as well. And I'm going to put the link with everything else that you've mentioned. Legaler Aid is spearheaded by this guy or co-founded by this guy called Stevie Giassi, and it's all about basically crowdfunding legal issues. Amy Rose, you're probably the best to describe exactly what it does.
Yeah, so it's a blockchain-based legal system where people can, like Abidi says, crowdfund. You can put your case up there and the community can fund that. Otherwise, via tokens and things like that, and you can accumulate tokens. But otherwise, there's also going to be an abundance of pro bono lawyers who specialize in different areas. And in Australia, there's a whole bunch of lawyers who are jumping on board because disrupting the legal industry over here is pretty big at the moment. So there's going to be a lot of pro bono, and he is planning on going worldwide. So it sounds like perfect it could have been done earlier, but the perfect sort of relationship.
Yeah, that's wonderful. He's doing it. it. That's great.
Yeah. So
it sounds like a great project. Yeah.
I have one more question. Sorry, Lynn, I know you're probably really busy, but
no, I'm fine.
Your daughter's over here in Australia, and Ross was over here for a while as well in his younger days. What's the relationship over here, and do you think you'll come and visit us?
Actually, my husband and I were on our way to visit Ross and Callie, my daughter, and my husband got a burst appendix, and we canceled the trip, so I never made it. So far, Callie's been saying, you've got to come and see why I love it so much, and I want to, but I've been so caught up with Ross's thing, but I do want to.
But where did the idea to come to Australia come from?
Really what happened was, well, my sister's stepson, who, we're all close, was living in Sydney. He married an Australian woman and was living in Sydney, and Callie went to visit him to check it out and then loved it. And then Ross was just visiting her for a few months. It's just that, she decided to go as far away from me as possible. You're talking about your mother? Yeah. I'm not sure that's why, but she couldn't have gone farther, I don't think. I think it's about as far as we can. So.
Well, just look forward to that glass of wine. It'll be coming soon, and I reckon your daughter would be so incredibly proud of you. Yeah, I'd be absolutely gobsmacked to have a mum like you.
Yeah, she and I are very close, actually. Yeah. Unfortunately, she loves it. I'm like, damn, why did I take them traveling when they were young? Everybody says, oh, take your children traveling, open there. I'm like, no, keep them home, make them afraid to travel so they'll stay by you. And that's my
just hilarious
advice. That's my advice, because otherwise they might end up in Sydney.
Well, my partner comes from Milan, and that's only because I went over. So I spent 10 years in Italy and then come back.
Favorite. Oh my gosh, that's great.
Well, it's been close to 13 years now that we've been back. Hence the 13-year-old. When he came along, we went. Yeah, so I think his parents would very strongly agree.
I'm sure. Yeah, and their grandchild's in Australia and everything.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show. We hope that your message was conveyed as well as you could have hoped, and we hope that through this podcast at least we get some more people to sign the signature and support Free Ross.
Thank you. Yeah, could I just say quickly, you don't have to agree with what Ross did when he was 26 years old. I understand that, but it's the sentence. That's what we're asking to be commuted. That's what we're asking to be made more reasonable. And for a nonviolent first-time offender to get this kind of sentence when he has no victims came forward at trial, no one has claimed they were harmed by Ross. This is outrageous. This is a dangerous precedent. And we really could, please sign the petition. Please share it. Yeah, and go to freeross.org for more info. But thank you. Thank you very much for having me on.
An absolute pleasure, and I've really loved us being able to explore the mama bear aspects of all of it too. It's making it very real.
Yeah, no, it has. It's been fun talking to you both. I feel like I'm just sort of hanging out with you talking. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we wanted to create this. We created this podcast so that people could learn about crypto and blockchain and the various, iterations of that in a context where it felt friendly. And, one of our things is there's no question, no dumb questions, or there's no stupid questions. Like, especially as women, we tend to feel intimidated sometimes in the tech finance circles and feel like we can't ask a question because we'll sound dumb. Right. 5,000 years of social conditioning has not done much to help it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk about why aren't there more women in crypto and that sort of thing. So it's good. You're helping that along.
Thanks, Lynn.
Wow, thank you. And we're also really bad at saying goodbye because we keep dragging it out.
But anyway, well, thank you.
Thanks so much.
I hope I'll get to meet you when I come to Australia. I'll make sure and look you
up.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be wonderful. Yeah. And I say this from my heart. Lots of love.
Same to
Thanks,
you.
Lynn.
Thanks a lot. Okay.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was wonderful, Lynn. That was really wonderful.
I cried a bit at the beginning.
It was great to talk to you.
It's really
well, it is. It really is. You have to, but we had fun too, and that's in our, it's good to talk. You can't be sad all the time, or people are going to get sick. I mean, I can't be sad all the time when I speak because people are going to get very tired very quickly of being around me. Yeah. But I know I want to get the point across, but also, you have to, and Ross is always telling me, Mom, you got to take care of yourself. You got to have a good time. You got to enjoy, and when I can, like talking to you two, and we, have a nice rapport, I enjoy it. And it's like, okay, good. For these moments, I can be having a good time, because that's what keeps you going, right? I mean, if you're miserable, it really depletes you. And all the time. So I grab those moments. Yeah.
And that's another manifestation. That's another, example of your incredible strength, because to be able to be kind and see the light when you're feeling, inundated with darkness is another, amazing human quality.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm working on it. Yeah. Pray about it every morning. So, yeah.
Well, anything that we can do to support you through social media and all, please tag us.
Thank you. That'd be
Let us
great.
know, and we'll do our best to. Our social circles are growing,
and I'll push it out there.
Oh, thank you, Lynn.
Definitely.
Of course. Yeah, great. Okay. Well, good to meet you, and I hope to reconnect at some point.
Lovely. Yes.
Thank you.
Will do.
Thank
you,
you,
Lynn.
Bye.
Bye-bye.